All right, guys, girls, back with another Digging Deep podcast. I guess this is what episode 4, 3. Um, so we've gotten some more questions that have rolled through our email. In particular, talking about plant material. What we see on commercial properties versus residential, if there is a difference. We also are started to hand prune azaleas and stuff like that, so we'll kind of get into that and talk about why we use different techniques as far as pruning goes, and so yeah, it should be a good one. Hope y'all stick around. But the first question is, we're just going to roll right into plant material. Talk about, obviously, me and Tyler do more commercial properties. Andrew does more residential on his routes. What are y'all seeing as far as, is there a difference on commercial and residential properties as far as what is being planted, and why do you think that is? Like, I mean, obviously you're gonna see a bunch of Elaeagnus on a commercial property.
Lots of hollies, lower pedalum, and a lot of that stuff is cheaper to get. So when they're doing new installs, and you got 10 times the plant material, they're gonna be looking at cost a lot more and going with cheaper options. The Elaeagnus fills space, it doesn't have any issues, but you're not going to be out there hand pruning it. So the difference in pruning techniques from residential to commercial is very different.
Yeah, I mean, it may be cheaper, I guess, up front as far as plant material costs, but you're going to pay for it, and as far as on a maintenance contract or yearly pruning, just because of the growth rate of it. I mean, it's a nightmare to maintain.
Yep.
I'm sure everybody in here has pruned miles and miles of Elaeagnus if you've done commercial. I mean, even there's some residential that has Elaeagnus. It's few and far between, but where do you mostly see the Elaeagnus planted on commercial properties?
Most of the time around the outside perimeter.
They're just using
around a
it
fence
as a
line,
screen.
just a security.
Yeah. You seen any on residential?
I have a handful that has some Elaeagnus, and I mean, really, Elaeagnus was kind of a more popular plant, I guess, back in maybe the 90s or so. So a lot of plant material kind of goes through phases. In the 90s, ward pedalums,
Pampas grass,
things like that were, real popular. And I think, a lot of the plants y'all see, on commercial, they're cheaper up front, and they're hardier, because not every commercial property is going to have irrigation, so they're going to stick to some, hollies, Elaeagnus, ward pedalums, where, water a little bit and then really just leave it alone.
And stuff that responds well to being sheared.
Right. Where, more on the residential, especially in the Mountain Brook area, you're going to see pretty much boxwoods, mondo, and hydrangeas, and there's different varieties of, boxwoods and hydrangeas, but generally those are the big three that you'll see. The boxwoods give you the evergreen, the mondo is evergreen and just more of a ground cover, and then you have your flowering hydrangeas.
We call it the Jones package, don't we?
That's it. So you'll see a lot of most properties in Mountain Brook, they'll have, you know, the round boxwoods, you know, with a small little hedge between them.
How much of a struggle are boxwoods for you? Like with them, some of the older ones that are starting to die out a little bit.
Yeah.
What are you going with?
Yes, I mean most of the ones I've had to replace have been American boxwoods.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have a number of issues. You know, mainly fungal issues from getting too much water. They'll, you know, root rot, phytophthora, things like that. So, you know, if I have a customer that's set on replacing those American boxwoods with another boxwood, I would go with Korean.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can still have their own issues, but they're a little bit more resilient. But I mean, we've had, you know, I've used alternatives for boxwoods, where maybe a customer didn't have irrigation or whatnot, but, you know, or on a tighter budget. You know, we would use maybe needlepoint hollies or
The globed ones, right?
the globe needlepoint hollies, and maybe just some 3-gallon needle points and create a hedge between them.
Mm-hmm.
Yopon hollies.
Yeah, I mean, for those of y'all that end up watching this, I guess, what was it, 2 years ago we had that deep freeze in December.
Mm-hmm.
Which obviously the plant material down here in the south does not like when we get into the single digits, especially for a long period of time. I think it was what, 2 days straight,
And it went from 75 degrees to 8 degrees.
Yeah, so
within 24 hours.
So I mean, none of the plant material liked it, but we're seeing a bunch of the American boxwoods that struggled, I guess, the following spring to put on, to look healthy and put on a good bit of new growth.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still seeing results from that deep freeze.
Yeah, a lot of plants you saw damage right away, but for boxwoods you really didn't see any until that spring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because boxwoods, I mean, they don't really show right away if they're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
They're such a slow grower, the Americans. What, and for the people watching again, what, as far as the difference between an American and a Korean, what would you say are the determining factors as far as how you can determine, you know, what's what, the difference between the two?
Yeah, you know, the Koreans to me kind of have a glossier type foliage, and the leaves are more round, where you know, Americans are, you know, really that deep green.
Like a flat green, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Elongated
A
leaves.
little more pointed at the end instead of the rounded shape.
And the Koreans will, you know, they grow significantly faster. I feel like.
And they're typically a little fuller.
The Americans will be, I mean, they'll get big, but it's going to take some time.
What's the biggest boxwood you think you've laid your eyes on? There's some big ones around town.
Yeah, I mean, probably 8-10 feet.
Mm-hmm.
How old do you reckon that thing is?
75
Yeah,
years plus.
it's ridiculous.
We've got some pretty good sized ones at the house, and they've never had any issues. So it's just
Yeah, no,
it's
it's
weird.
crazy how, you know, you can plant some things and they're not irrigated, hardly get fertilized, and they seem to do okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're in these protected environments, so to speak, where they're irrigated on a regular basis, they're fertilized, you're kind of, I give it the analogy like you're giving it vitamins, so to speak, so its immune system, like a human would be, is it should be better in the long run, but you're also, it's like sending, you have a kid, right? And you send him to daycare. Well, they're more than likely going to get sick for the first few times, and then their immune system slowly starts to build up. But at the same time, you're not really allowing their immune system to build up tolerance and resistance to certain things. Whether that's a good analogy or not, it works for me, and it makes sense.
If they're well taken care of for several years, and then that homeowner or whatnot's not giving them that type of treatment the next few years, they were
babied.
they were being babied, and they don't have that nutrition that they were getting, so they're really just in shock.
Yeah, and I think people plant them so close together and so many, you block out a lot of airflow too.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, people plant them super close to the house, right on top of each other. They're just not getting the sunlight and airflow.
Yeah, I mean,
like they should.
Contractors or home builders specifically, when they build these spec homes and just go in and slap 100 houses together and just throw plant material in there. Wherever there's a gap, they're going to throw a piece of plant material in there, and they don't take into account its full mature height. And I mean, airflow is a big thing when it comes to allowing the foliage to dry out and everything like that, because if not, you're gonna run into fungal issues. It's like if you threw a dirty sock in a dark, damp corner for a few days
versus one in sunlight.
Right, you're gonna have mold and mildew on that sock, and versus the one in sunlight that's gonna be dry and won't be clean, obviously, but it'll be dry. So you mentioned yaupons, Andrew. I'd say that's another piece of plant material that's on commercial pretty readily.
Pretty normal.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of issues other than their growth habit. They grow pretty quick. You've got to stay on top of shear. But obviously with the gas shears, just on a commercial setting, it's just quicker.
Yeah.
But,
anything else? What do you see, Andrew, before we move on to the next topic? What do you see more on the residential properties versus, I guess, commercial? Anything you want to add to it?
No, I mean, not really. I think we covered it for the most part. It's just, commercial, you're gonna see, really some tougher plants. They don't necessarily care about, if whether it blooms or not.
Okay. Next question we'll roll right into is I'd say Andrew's favorite one, hand pruning. What do y'all like hand pruning? Do you think there's a benefit to it? And then we can even maybe roll into why we do it and how we do it on certain different pieces of plant material. I'd say first, let's talk about what the guys are pruning right now as far as what time of the season we're in. Obviously the azaleas have stopped blooming for the past few weeks. So that's, obviously going to be one of your first pieces of plant material to be hand pruned. Do y'all see a benefit to it at all?
I mean, I do. There's a number of things we could, talk about.
Yeah, we could go down a rabbit hole for sure.
But yeah, really, right now with the azaleas done blooming, we're starting to prune those. You know, as far as overall, you know, shearing versus hand pruning, and yeah, it kind of depends on a number of things. The type of plant, you know, really depends a lot on the customer. Do they want things just super tight, or do they want it kind of a more natural look? You know, where if they want a particular plant nice and tight all the time, you're going to be gas shearing it. If they want it natural looking, you're going to be just hand pruning it. So I mean, y'all have any comments as far as that goes?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had some customers through the year, residential, commercial, doesn't really matter. You know, some don't have a preference. Some don't care about the blooms. They just want everything as tight as it can be every single visit. So obviously you're going to be shearing 90% of the plant material on that property, if not all of it. I've seen azaleas. I haven't done it, but I've worked for companies in the past that some of the clients, like I was saying, want their stuff sheared high and tight every visit. Don't care about the blooms. I've seen azaleas sheared. The azaleas are still living, but what it does is creates just this. It may look aesthetically pleasing as far as them being rounded and tight, but it just creates so much dense foliage on the outside because you're
printing in the same spot.
You're what? Yeah, and you're making just heading back cuts is what we call it. You're just you're shearing and nipping the tips of it off, which creates the buds. Excuse me on that. Creates the buds right below it to flush out and push out new foliage. So when you do that repetitively year after year, you get so much dense, heavy, thick growth on the outside, on the top part of the plant. And then when you go to cut that plant back for whatever reason, you're down to sticks on the inside. There's nothing there. So it may look aesthetically pleasing to the customer, you know, for 5, 6, 7 years, but if you have to cut it back for any reason, you're gonna get into sticks regardless. So and it's gonna look ugly.
And that, I think that one goes back to the install. Like, you should find out what they want as far as look and try to talk them out of that. If they're going to want something sheared like that, azalea may not be the one. You know, you may want to go with something different and just inform them on, hey, you know, we're going to run into this issue. Because when I was on a maintenance route years ago, we had one and we sheared the azaleas in a little ball every time, and then she wanted them cut back, and we cut them back, and I mean, it was, you know, sticks the size of your pinky all the way. It's just what you're going to run into.
Did they respond well to being cut back hard?
It took them a while to flush back out. They finally did, but obviously not as good as they were before.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not necessarily anything totally wrong with shearing, especially azaleas. But yeah, I mean, you know, if you're wanting to cut them back drastically, you know, it's gonna, right when you get past that top, you know, 6 inches of a foot, you know, you're into nothing but sticks. Where if you know, each year after they bloom, go in and make some deeper cuts, you know, every spot you make a cut, that's where new growth is going to be forming. So you know, you're going to get, you know, at least some type of consistency throughout the canopy of the plant. You know, to where, you know, if a customer does want you to renewal prune, it's not going to look quite as bad.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you can take them back and make them look a lot better with hand pruning than just shearing it all back. So instead of cutting every little branch, you're just pocket pruning and taking the ones you want.
Yeah.
To get it back down.
I'll tell you what's a nightmare is to go in and actually pocket prune, hand prune azaleas that have been sheared for the past 5 to 6 years.
takes time.
It's
You gotta
yeah, it's a
do a little
nightmare.
bit at a time.
um, Benefits to hand printing versus shears. Let's talk about why you wouldn't shear, or why we try to stay away from shearing plant material like that. Or you could say shearing in general. Why is it better to hand prune versus shearing?
Well, I mean, kind of like I touched on, is giving you, consistency throughout,
Mhm.
the canopy, and you're not, if you're shearing, you're pruning it at that same spot every time and just damaging the same location basically of the plant, and that can create, insect issue, just a number of things. You're not making a clean cut, with the shears. Where hand printers, you're, making a nice clean cut, and
Yeah, I mean, there's, it'll be an argument within the industry for forever. What's better, hand pruning or shearing? But I think typically, no matter how sharp your gas shears may be, most people tend, if you're planting more or shearing more woody stem type plant material, you're just going to end up ripping into the tissue, the cambium layer of that plant, which allows it to not heal right. They say plants don't heal, they compartmentalize, which is true, but it's just, they're not able to do what they need to do to recover like they should, which leaves them susceptible to. It's just like if you took a butter knife and a sharp knife, they say it's better to, if you're going to cut yourself with a sharp knife versus a dull knife, because
it's a cleaner
cut and heals better. Same thing with plant material. I think that's a good analogy.
And how do y'all look at it, as far as like a maintenance standpoint? I know, like, if you're consistently gas shearing something, you're gonna have to, if you gas shear some azaleas, really in 2-3 weeks, you're gonna have to be
time to go again.
Yeah, I mean, once you start, you gotta go with it until
because
end of October,
Mhm.
around here, because it's still 90 degrees around then.
Because all that new growth is forming at the same spot.
Yeah.
You're just doubling everything.
And honestly, I mean, it's quicker and easier to gas shear, but
not if you have to do it. Every 2
and
weeks.
honestly, the cleanup, I feel like,
Yeah, if people knew how to clean up correctly, I don't think we'd get half the callbacks we do. I mean,
That's another good one about hand pruning. I mean, you got it in your hand when you
Right.
make that cut. You can throw it in a pile, flip it in the bag, and you're gone.
yeah.
I mean, when you shear, you're having, a bunch of them are falling in the beds, and you can't see them, but all those a lot of them are sitting on top of the plants, and it's going to look brown the next week.
Yeah.
It's just
messy.
overall cleanup.
Especially the boxwoods, like Americans. I mean, they don't respond well at all to gas shears. It looks like you took a torch to them after the first few weeks.
Yes,
blistered them.
Yeah, they do not like it.
Pretty much all boxwoods you would want a scissor shear. Korean boxwoods, it's okay to gas shear them. I prefer not to, especially on some of the smaller ones. Some older, more well established, they'll respond just fine. But I don't know what y'all's take is on
I think it
that.
really depends on where they are and how many. I mean, if you can't keep up with hand pruning them, then,
Mhm.
you know, if the customer's okay with it, you know, maybe hand prune the front, but the sides and the back of them, you know, maybe gas shear some of them
Yeah.
easy. If you know how to run the gas shears and you're not gonna gouge them.
Right.
And you're letting the shears do the work.
Mhm.
You're not trying to. I see a lot of people use gas shears and they're trying to do it too quickly, and they're not letting the gas shears do the work and actually make the clean cuts that it needs to.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to force, essentially muscle it into and to getting it done, and so they can clean up and move on, and they're just not letting the gas shears do the work, which ultimately they just look like crap.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some stuff you have to do, like Iliagnus, and
Yeah, a lot of
Neopons
the
are
commercial,
fine.
a lot of the commercial plant material we were just talking about. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna gas shear all of that. I mean,
But I mean, really, if you're doing proper site prep and planning, and you're putting the right plant in the right place, pruning really shouldn't be an issue. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have to nip on stuff here and there, but use more dwarf varieties.
Mhm.
Be careful and make a better selection as far as what you're planting on that property or that site, and take into consideration the maintenance of it. And that's what I said earlier. Home builders and stuff like that, they're just slapping it in, and they're not going to be the ones doing the maintenance, so they don't really care.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to beat up on home builders, but that's just what we see a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I get it, they're just trying to fill a space, but it's just not. It doesn't help us out at all. Or
yeah,
any
and
landscape
even
company.
on the residential side, a lot of customers, and ideally you want your plant material under windows,
Mhm.
keeping it at the bottom of the window ledge or whatnot. But if you have tea olives that are planted in front of a window and the window ledge is 4 feet up,
Yeah.
it's
You're never gonna keep it down.
so I don't care how much you prune it. So yeah, I mean, taking into installation.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's key. You got anything else to add to it before we
No,
move
I mean,
on?
like I said, I mean, we could talk for a while on what to hand prune, what not to hand prune.
Mhm.
And we'll try to show y'all some videos of some things we do prefer to hand prune and how we do it.
Mhm.
The next question we've gotten is, and I specifically got an email about it last week about a property of mine, is some people are asking, why my plants didn't bloom this year, whether that be a specific plant, or a number of plants on the property. Like, I've got one property, there's azaleas scattered throughout, and there was just one little grouping, probably 4 or 5, of the same variety, but they just for some reason didn't bloom. And I mean, there's a number of reasons that it probably didn't bloom. I know for a fact that all the azaleas on that property got pruned before July 4th, which is what I've always been told is our cutoff line in the South, especially in Alabama, central Alabama, to be specific. As long as you've pruned the azaleas by that time, it allows, because azaleas set their buds for next year. So you want to prune those right after they bloom, in the springtime. You have some time to do that, but I've had good success with pruning them before July 4th and them still
Mhm.
doing well. But yeah, I had a lady ask as to why they didn't bloom, and You know, they bloomed last year. Plenty of foliage on them. They just didn't put out for some reason, and I honestly couldn't give her a legitimate answer just because there's so many different things that they go that it could have been.
Yeah, I mean, really kind of sight unseen. I would ask the question, yeah, when was it pruned last? How much sun is it getting? You're gonna have. I mean, I have a number of properties, and kind of sticking with azaleas where, where they're in more sun, they're gonna have more blooms. If they're pretty much in full shade, you're gonna have very limited amount of blooms. So yeah, I mean, depending on location,
Yeah.
Can play a factor.
Yeah, and I mean it's weird because obviously all of them in this community are in, I'd say, filtered light. So it's just strange. I wish I had an answer, but like I said, there's just a number of things that go into it. But my first answer to her was I do know for a fact they got pruned before July 4th, because all of them in the community did, and I actually hand pruned them all. So I don't know. Is there anything that y'all see or have answers to as far as why certain things may not bloom when they should be?
Yeah, I mean
And they're on our tree and shrub program, so they got fertilized. I mean, it's some things, just don't always happen how you want them to. Unfortunately, I mean, it's Mother Nature that plays a factor in all this. So
yeah, I mean, plants can be, a mystery sometimes. And especially last year after that freeze, we had a maybe a handful of plants on one side of the house that perked right back up, bloomed at the normal time, where on the other side of the house, same type of plants, are still trying to recover. It could depend on, the weather, and if that side of the house took more of a direct wind hit from the freeze, where maybe the other side was more protected, then they would be fine and bloom normal. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, the making sure you're pruning it on time, and
making sure it's get the nutrients that it needs in a timely manner. What's y'all's favorite flowering shrub? I know I put y'all on the spot, but
Mine, as far as shrub, would probably be the gardenias. We always had them growing up. It's kind of one of those that takes me back to childhood. It's got its own set of issues, but they look really good. They smell good. A lot of people like them. So,
about you?
I would probably say, I'd probably say camellias. I like the japonicas. I feel like they hold their blooms for a good little while. And they're kind of blooming towards the end of the year when not as much is blooming.
Yeah, the landscape's kind of bleak then.
Kind of that fall and winter, and I've seen some of them blooming in January, and
yeah,
and a lot of that depends on the location of them, and the environment.
I'd say mine's the quince.
That was one plant that crossed my mind. I do like quince.
I just like a lot of those things that bloom in the springtime. gets you out of the bleakness of winter and that dreary time, and it just lets you know that
It's coming.
yeah, the sun's about to be shining and warm
Mhm.
weather, and I don't know, just makes you feel all warm and fuzzy. Um, but yeah, y'all got anything else to add before we wrap this up?
I think that's it on this one. If we missed anything, though, y'all comment for sure and let us know, and we can
Yeah,
get into more detail.
we've had some pretty good feedback. Obviously, the more feedback we get from y'all, the better. Let us know if there's something that y'all don't like about how we're doing this. It's our, like I was saying, our third, fourth episode, so we're still working out the kinks and fairly new to it. But we want to give y'all content that y'all enjoy watching, and that y'all want to stick around for. So go like us, and subscribe to the TikToks, and find us on Facebook. We put YouTube short videos out there, so there's plenty of content out there, and will be more. So
And all the links are on the YouTube page,
Okay.
so they can find the website, Instagram, all of that's on there. So,
yeah, and here shortly, hopefully we'll be doing a giveaway. Not sure what that entails, but hopefully it'll give you all some incentives to stick around and subscribe. So yeah, that wraps us up for this one. I guess we'll see y'all next time.